I moved into this new neighborhood not too long ago and got started talking with my neighbor. Turns out he's a big petrol head like me. We hit it off great. And before long, he had dropped a racing pedals and a steering wheel from a sim rig into my lap and said, "Let's go racing." And I thought, wow, that's a that's a hell of a way to welcome someone to a new neighborhood. I wish they would do that more places. Hey there, welcome to the channel. Usually I'm on here blowing money on an old German car, and as I found out over the past 5 to 7 years, that's kind of expensive. What's even more expensive is racing those cars. So what's a petrol head to do? There's always sim racing, isn't there? That can be inexpensive, right? Right? So I started looking at options for a permanent sim rig for my equipment for sim racing, but I was limited by 3 big factors. One was space. I'm limited to a pretty small space, 5 foot long by 2 foot wide. It also has to accommodate more than the sim rig itself. It's got to have shelves, it's got to fit a printer, the desktop computer. 3, it had to be cost efficient. Not meaning cheap, not meaning inexpensive. I just can't break the bank on this one. My budget is about $300 to $400. So those limitations ruled out a lot of the foldable rigs. I didn't see a lot of value for money with the foldable rigs that I saw on Amazon. That also ruled out the 80/20 aluminum extrusion rigs, which look fantastic and I'm sure perform great, but man, they're expensive. Then I discovered a material that changed the game. I discovered a material called a strut channel. You might see these at your hardware store, marketed under brand names such as Unistrut or Superstrut. So a strut channel, and I have an example of one here, is a long rigid structure with a open-ended box section here. And you see it's got this rolled lip, and that allows you to slide around and secure captive nuts. Kind of like this guy here, this spring nut. I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like. You put it inside, you twist it, and there. You've got a captive nut inside of a strut channel there. So it's really versatile, and it's sturdy. It allows you to rapidly prototype structures, and then at a later time move them around, expand them pretty easily. Now out in the wild you'll typically find these strut channels being hung from an open ceiling to support electrical conduit, HVAC ducting, PVC piping, just whatever. You can also use it to make furniture and shelves. I've seen this stuff being used to create some really cool elaborate chassis welding rigs, which is fantastic. But more importantly, this is much less expensive by the foot than the equivalent 80/20 aluminum extrusion that's used in those high-end sim racing rigs. A foot of that 80/20 channel will set you back about $8 a foot, whereas a foot of this 12-gauge galvanized steel strut channel from your major big box hardware store is only going to set you back about $3 a foot. But one disadvantage of this over the 80/20 is that 80/20 is a lot cheaper to ship. This is steel, much more heavier, much more expensive to ship, so you really kind of need to source it close to you, either a big box hardware store. Hopefully you have a wholesaler in your area that you can also buy some of this stuff from. So the building material sets the stage for how the rest of the rig is going to be constructed, and it's going to affect how rigid that sim rig is going to be. Luckily with the steel strut channel, it's going to be very rigid indeed. You don't want a floppy rig, that's the last thing you want, but you also don't want an uncomfortable rig, so you want to be careful in picking a seat that can keep you comfy for long periods of time and also doesn't break the bank. Now lots of folks just get old used car seats from Facebook Marketplace. In most cases, car seats are designed from the factory to keep a person comfy for a long period of time. For a budget sim rig, seats don't have to be fancy. They don't have to be perfect either. Worn and used is fine, as long as it's comfortable. You can find seats all day long for cheap on Facebook Marketplace. On my Facebook Marketplace, I found a listing from a speed shop here in Connecticut that was race prepping a 240SX, was selling the original Nismo seat from the car, complete with sliders for $50. So I snatched that up immediately. Now on very high-end racing cars, the seat is fixed for safety reasons. It doesn't move. It's not adjustable. It's the pedals and the steering column that are moved around to fit the driver. Now, safety isn't a concern on sim rigs, so what I recommend is finding a seat with sliders already built in, rather than fabricating your own sliders or even getting aftermarket sliders and trying to make those work with whatever seat that you have. So make it easy on yourself, get some used seats with the sliders from Facebook Marketplace, and call it a day. The seating position determines where everything else on the rig needs to be, so that's where I started in this build. Now, as I mentioned, this Nismo seat came equipped with sliders operated by a handle off to the side. Pretty sweet solution, worked very well for my space-limited application. Now, I wanted to raise the seat up and give it a little extra tilt backwards for comfort, so I offset the sliders on the bottom of the seat with these 4-hole L brackets and mounted the sliders to some strut channel. The biggest challenge with a sliding seat is making sure you keep the top tracks and the bottom tracks in alignment, which means a lot of measuring, but strut channels are designed with cutouts at regular spacing, so as long as you count the cutouts correctly, you may not even need to get out the measuring tape. And that's one seat and sliding platform ready to go. Then I moved on to the base. I had 5 foot 2 inches from front to back to work with, so that became the length of the base. Nothing too special here, just still using those 4-hole L brackets to keep the sides together. Notice the open end of the channel is facing inwards so that I have some surface area up top to rest the seat platform. Then I loosely mounted some 2-hole L brackets for the seat platform, keeping in mind that this might have to be adjusted in the future. It's a really good thing this strut channel system is very adjustable. Now that I knew the range of the seat and where the pedals needed to be, that provided a frame of reference for constructing the uprights that would hold the monitor, the computer, the wheel, and whatever else I'd be putting on the shelving. My first pass at the horizontal supports put the wheel higher than where I needed it to be, so I had to adjust as needed. A digital level was super handy here, but you could get by just as easily with an old-fashioned bubble level. If I had to single out the weakest point of this entire build, it would be this monitor here. I don't know the size, but it doesn't give you a great field of view or high detail when you're racing. But I am pretty proud of how I got this mounting bracket to work with the strut channel system. Nothing special about this monitor bracket, just got it off of Amazon. And that plus the strut channel means I can upgrade my monitor down the road with minimal effort. There's nothing really special about these shelves either. It came from some shelving that I demoed elsewhere in the house, and it just slots right into the strut channel, so it just made sense to use it like that. And as a finishing touch, I gave the channels a heavy coat of black spray paint and let that dry for a day or two on each side. All that was left was to move it into place and put it all back together. Now back to the strut channel system. It's very flexible, but that comes at the cost of needing a lot of fasteners, brackets, and other odds and ends. Now I ended up using a lot more fasteners than I thought I would be using. Part of that was just the complexity of the design. I could have made my design less complex, not have shelves, and that could have cut the cost by maybe a third. Having said all that, let me show you what I used for my rig. This is it. This is the result. One Superstrut sim rig slash business center. Something I haven't seen elsewhere. Now, could I have made it less complicated? Could I have made it a little bit cheaper? Cut a few corners? Yes, but I feel this is an excellent starting point. It doesn't break the bank, it does everything I need it to, and maybe a little bit more. Will it make me a better driver? Absolutely not. Will it help me learn to be a better driver? Absolutely. So I'm very happy with the results here. All that's left is to actually race. So I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you down the road.
Strut